Is Nick Sirianni on the hot seat? I've looked on social media. I've looked at the comment section here on Eagles Now. I've read all of your messages, whether it be through social media or on my email. A lot of you out there are fed up with Nick Sirianni. And it seems as though a lot of players on this team feel as though his act is growing a little bit thin and old. So we're going to explore that question at the bottom of your screen. First, let's pop up our poll question for today's show, and we want to hear from all of the real ones in the chat right now. How hot is the temperature of Nick Sirianni's seat? I want you to scale it from 1 to 100. 1 being cold, 100 ratcheted up and very hot. I have a lot of thoughts on this subject matter, but first, a shout out to Prize Picks. They have been a terrific sponsor for us all throughout the 2023 NFL season right here on Eagles Now. And this is the largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America. And they have the best deal that any DFS app has to offer. An opportunity for you to win real money and get $100 back if you deposit $100. So automatically, using the link at the bottom of your screen, prizepicks.com/CLNS, and the code CLNS, you can have $200 into your account. My picks for Christmas, I nearly hit on my selections. I had Boston Scott, more than a half touchdown. A.J. Brown was able to cash in, more than 49.5 receiving yards. Saquon Barkley found pay dirt as well. There are insurances where you can choose to go 2 out of 3 picks in this instance and still have the opportunity to win a bunch of real money. prizepicks.com/CLNS, code CLNS for a $100 deposit match. So the topic at hand here, is Nick Sirianni on the hot seat? Man, what a weird year it's been for the Birds. Philadelphia, 11-4 after a Super Bowl loss. And you would think that everybody would be happy going into Week 17, sitting at 11-4, avoiding the Super Bowl hangover, so to speak, with an opportunity with 2 games left to still get the number 1 seed in the NFC. That isn't the case. Why is that? Things have looked off and they've felt off for Philadelphia all throughout this season because the Eagles, think about this, in my opinion, have not really played one great dominant game from minute 1 to minute 60. They've had to come back in a bunch of games. They've displayed mental toughness in doing so. Jalen Hurts has put the team on his back. He's had multiple MVP type of performances, and those comebacks have been thrilling. But unlike last year where Philadelphia led a majority of those games by multiple scores and with big advantages and cushions at halftime, the Eagles have had to come back in a lot of games, and they've lost a lot of their leads. With the offense, the unit has been way too inconsistent with all of the talent and all of the returning players from an offense that was one of the best and most explosive in football last year. The defense, on the other hand, bottom 5 in a lot of major categories. Red zone defense, third down defense, they've been horrific for the most part. And this pass rush, which had a league-high 70 sacks last year, the most since the 1980s when the Bears had those great defenses, they can't get to the quarterback and finish. And then lastly here, this has been a massive problem. The Eagles have looked like a poorly coached team. They've had a lot of penalties. They've given the football over and turned it over a lot. They've made a lot of dumb mistakes. And when you're turning the football over and you're not forcing a lot of turnovers, that is a recipe for disaster. So this 11-4 record is a little bit misleading, and it feels like that. And because of that, a lot of people, they're pointing the finger at Nick Sirianni. And players have been frustrated. From A.J. Brown multiple times this year, not speaking with the media, having some sideline arguments with coaches Sirianni and other players, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and A.J. Brown complaining about a lack of targets. I imagine that Quez Watkins, after pretty much getting benched against the Giants and at multiple points this year, is frustrated, and Rashad Penny is a healthy scratch for a player who has shown that he has a lot of ability in this league with the rushing attack that at times has struggled. And when he's been able to stay healthy, Penny has been a good football player. You have Josh Sweat, after that Cowboys defeat, calling out the defensive scheme. Jalen Hurts questioning the team's commitment after that Seahawks awful comeback. And then you've had these multiple sideline arguments, which I talked about at length on Tuesday's show, I don't think it's always necessarily that bad. Uber competitive sport, tensions and emotions run high. The Eagles have a standard, and they're frustrated because they're not playing up to their standard and up to their potential. So I actually kind of like the fire that's on this Eagles team. But there are some underlying concerns here because everything has felt hard. Everything has felt difficult. Things have felt disjointed. But that's also the case for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs and the Eagles, two teams in the Super Bowl last year, they just haven't had the same year this year as compared to last year. What's also a little bit concerning is that the Eagles are 32nd in point differential. Among all playoff teams, their average margin of victory is the lowest, ahead of Seattle. It's just north of 7 points. And the Eagles are also, for the analytical nerds out there, and I rely on analytics from time to time, I get nerdy too from time to time here on this show, 32nd in DVOA. What's crazy, though, is that the Eagles can still get the number 1 seed in the NFC. And the reality of this year is that this team, after making that long playoff run last year, feels, looks tired, fatigued, worn down. And all of those words, I think, are accurate depictions with how they play, but also how they carry themselves off the field too and in the locker room. The brutal schedule, I don't think people have talked about this enough, has not helped at all. You had Dolphins, Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, Niners on a mini-bye, Cowboys on a mini-bye, Seahawks to the Pacific Northwest, a team that you have not beaten since 2008. That stretch right there with the opponents, with the travel, with the rest disadvantage, with the quarterbacks that you were playing against, that doesn't help at all. And as Elijah Stovall said with the Super Chat earlier on our live show, 2 new coordinators doesn't help either because the messaging, the play calling, the offensive continuity, all of those things are impacted when you have new coordinators. And now you're basically on your second offensive coordinator this year. My view on all of this, to kind of summarize things on the show, I'm going to take a word out of Aaron Rodgers' playbook. Everybody needs to RELAX, relax. Some people calling for Nick Sirianni's job on Twitter, you've officially gone too far. Nick Sirianni is a good coach. I understand there are concerns with him not being a play caller, with the offense lacking a little bit of creativity. But the good thing is that in year 1 of a rebuild, Sirianni made the playoffs. They went from a pass-happy team to a run-heavy team. He understood what they weren't doing well, and they pivoted. That's a good sign. Last year, the Eagles were 14-3 and made it to the Super Bowl. And here on the show, for multiple weeks, I've said, Sirianni, I need more pre-snap motion. I need more diversity in the playbook. I need you to get more creative with your offense, from a play design to pre-snap to the route tree. And what did we see against the New York Giants? We did see some strides there. Jalen Hurts threw a pass from under center for the second time this year. We saw probably the most pre-snap motion that we've seen from this Eagles team all year. We saw some choice routes. We saw some adjustments made. And that's a really, really good sign that Sirianni was able to look in the mirror and make adjustments, because that's what really good coaches do. Really good coaches also win a lot of games. He's 34-15 as a head coach. The Eagles are 25-7 over the last 2 years. That's a winning percentage of almost 80%. And that's the best stretch in the NFL. And Sirianni has played a role in that. Now, at the same point, multiple things can be true. Nick Sirianni needs to do better, but he's made some changes to the offense. He has also admitted he needs to control himself a little bit more on the sideline to keep his emotions in check. And Sirianni, I want to continue to see the offensive creativity to help out Jalen Hurts. You're an offensive mind at the end of the day, and you need to do a better job of managing the game, like at points in that Giants tilt, as well as your emotions. But what people should be rooting for is consistency and continuity at that head coaching spot. You want another Andy Reid run, where he's here for 14 years, and the Eagles made it to 5 NFC Championship games. There hasn't been a repeat winner in the NFC East since 2004. Goes to show you how impressive that stretch run And that entire run was for Andy Reid. And you want that at head coach. You don't want to have to recycle coaches consistently like the Eagles have done with Chip Kelly, with Doug Peterson. You don't want to do the same with Nick Sirianni. There are a lot of strengths to who he is as a coach. And the relationships that he mentioned that he has in the building allows for some of the disagreements to happen. And honestly, in our entire country, we should be having more disagreements. We should be having more open-minded conversations and more discourse. And people can agree, and it's okay to disagree. That's not a bad thing always. How hot is the temperature of Nick Sirianni's seat? I'm asking you that question one more time. Scale it for me from 1 to 100 down in the chat.